Hi, is this Noam Chomsky?
Yeah, speaking.
Hi, I have some general questions. At its best, what can activism be?
What can what?
What can activism be?
At best, it's something that achieves results that it's trying to attain. That's activism. You've got a goal, you want to do something about it, you pick various techniques and approaches, you refine them, find the ones that seem to be working, improve them, try to get somewhere.
I wanted to ask about 4 different things that activism can do, and just maybe you could just comment on them. The first one is just solidarity.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's take the Occupy movement. One of their achievements, in fact, I think one of the most important ones, has just been to create communities of solidarity, mutual support, democratic participation. That's a very important achievement. In fact, particular in a society like ours, which is kind of like almost designed to isolate people and separate them from one another, which is a great technique of control, of course. So forming communities based on solidarity, sure, that's very important. And in fact, it's not, that's the reason why the labor movement from its origins has been concerned with solidarity. That's one of its main slogans. We're going to have to work together. We ought to work together because we ought to be helping one another, but that's the only way in which we're going to confront concentrated power.
Okay, and another one is finding out what you think and what your values are.
Well, that, I think, relates to solidarity. You find out what you think and what your values are by participation and interchange. I mean, maybe there are some people who can sit alone in a room and think through these questions and find answers, but very few, even in the sciences. Like take the floor where I happen to be talking in a science-based university, MIT. You go around, look at the offices, people are working together, talking with each other, trying to sharpen up what they think, getting reactions. That's what you find when you believe yourself.
But most people think they already know what they think and what their values are.
Well, then they haven't thought very hard about it. Because we learn, I mean, at some general level, yes. I mean, like I know I'm opposed to, say, aggression and massacre. But when you really try to get down to a more refined understanding of these questions, interaction with others, feedback, criticism, and so on, answering objections, all of that is part of discovering things about yourself.
Okay, and another one is just information. For example, where do you get your information from? Is it mostly from networks of people?
No. Well, to some extent, but it's the main sources. I read a bunch of newspapers every day, read a ton of journals, read people's papers, talk to others about what they're doing, talk to them about what I'm doing and getting reactions, all endless numbers of books. There's no magic about it. You just have to work hard.
And what do you think, in terms of activism, what do you think about information networks?
Oh, that'd be very helpful. Groups of typically people with shared interests and concerns can interchange and supplement one another's not only information but also understanding. Actually, we all do this. I'm involved in any number of informal exchanges which do this all the time, sometimes close friends, sometimes people I barely know.
Do you know any examples of people who are extremely knowledgeable, not because they're fanatics, but because they belong to such a network?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's one of the functions of labor movements during their peak. The labor union hall or labor meetings were places where people could learn, interchange, discover, other out. Workers' education was always a central part of the active workers movement, and it's the same in other things, other whatever whatever kind of network you're involved with.
And the last one is action. Which tactics do you think are the most effective?
I don't think there's any general answer to that. Depends what you're trying to achieve. Some things may be effective if you're organizing to try to get the city to put a traffic light on an intersection where your kids are crossing the street to school. Then some kinds of tactics are right there. Different kinds of tactics are appropriate if you're trying to set up a cooperative enterprise, either production, commerce, whatever, owned by and run by the workforce in the community. A very important thing to do, and different tactics are required there. Still different ones are required if you're trying to press for certain kinds of legislation. There's just no single answer. And in fact, tactics have to be kind of discovered. Choosing tactics is a tricky operation. You have to take into account lots of things that are uncertain, like what's the reaction of other people going to be like, say, who you're trying to reach out to.
What about mass protests? I mean, that's a pretty standard action. That's pretty important, isn't it?
Sometimes, I've taken part in many of them. Sometimes it's a very important thing to do, like a demonstration in Washington against the Vietnam War, or Martin Luther. To take one that failed, unfortunately, Martin Luther King's final dream. Just when he was assassinated, he was planning to lead a march of the poor to Washington. It did take place right after he was assassinated, beginning at the motel where he was killed, going through the South, through the places where the civil rights struggle had been waged, and finally ended up in Washington, set up a kind of a tent city, Resurrection City. They were totally scorned by Congress. The police were called in and drove them out of the city, and for good measure came in the middle of the night and smashed up Resurrection City. It was a Democratic Congress, incidentally. Well, that's one demonstration that didn't work. It should have worked. With more participation and engagement, it would have made a big difference.
And what are all the different kinds of things that can happen at a demonstration besides scaring politicians?
Well, demonstrations, one of their main functions actually is creating solidarity. Those are ways in which people work together to achieve a common goal. And that strengthens the bonds and even is informative. It gives them ways to go on. It's not just a matter of frightening politicians. It's also a matter of showing, look, here's what the population, or a substantial part of it, believes. You better pay some attention to us.
Okay, and I just have another question. If you were talking to the American public and you wanted to tell them why they should become active, what would you say?
I would simply have them take a careful, honest look at the world around them. And if they do, they will see very serious problems all over the place, ranging, take simply in the United States, a problem of, say, 50 million people without any health care, which is just a scandal in the richest society in history. At another extreme, they would see that our dedication to maximizing the use of fossil fuel, which we do, is going to drive society off the cliff, just like lemmings going to disaster, and maybe pretty soon, and all sorts of other things in between. Well, okay, that's reasons for activism. If you care about making a decent world in which your children and grandchildren could live, you got to do something about these things.
And what are the sacrifices you have to make when you become active?
Well, sacrifices range from giving up time, taking things away from other things you'd like to do, all the way up to facing harsh repression, maybe jail sentences, who knows what.
You went to jail. What was that like as an experience for you?
That's one of the most unpleasant experiences I can imagine. I was never in jail for a long time, but just the very idea that you have no choices, your fate is completely in someone else's hands, and that person can capriciously decide anything they want about you. It's a strange feeling the first time you undergo it. Even in the simple, I wasn't put in a maximum security prison. This is civil disobedience.
But what was it like? Can you tell me a little bit more about the experience?
That's what the experience. For one thing, it's boring as hell. But for another, the overwhelming experience, at least for me, is the sense that you have no choices, no control. Essentially, you're under someone else's arbitrary rule.
And how long were you actually in jail for?
Well, I was in jail quite a few times, but never more than a day or two.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Professor Chomsky. I really appreciate it.